Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Please kindly have a seat. The good news is it finally rains. Well, in Indonesia, rain considered blessing. And it's good because the temperature goes down so we don't feel as hot as it was before. Okay, so just to let you know, this early morning, the government of Indonesia, represented by the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, together with the Ministry of Environment in Indonesia, have launched the Indonesia Blue Carbon Ecosystem Action Guide, and I couldn't find another better time to talk about the blue foods now. So, blue foods are important for economy, for livelihoods, for the nutritional security, and in some nation, it's vital for the culture of its people. So young people, youth must drive transformation and promote blue food in order to enhance climate resilience as well as to advance global carbon integrity. And this session, we will also connect Indonesian experiences with our counterparts, Asian and Amazonian perspectives, forming a cross-regional learning experience. So I'm going to call upon our moderator to lead the session. He is the Policy Advocacy Manager and Youth Program Coordinator from PCRP Indonesia. Please welcome Ari Adi Pratomo.
Check. Thank you. Good afternoon and selamat sore. And welcome to Indonesian Pavilion at COP30 here in Belém, Brazil. Give a round of applause to all of us. Woo! Finally, it's rain, a little bit fresh air. And then today we will talk about the Blue Food System. But first, let me introduce about the Climate Reality Project Indonesia. The Climate Reality Project Indonesia is part of the global network of the Climate Reality Project, one of the organizations founded by the former Vice President Al Gore. And in Indonesia, we have more than 1,200 climate leaders spreading across 38 different provinces and work in so many different sectors, from educators, scientists, innovators, students, coastal practitioners, filmmakers, and also environmental storytellers. What we do is simple. We turn climate knowledge into climate action. And then today we will hear about the Blue Food futures, from the mangrove restorations to sustainable aquaculture to coastal youth training to indigenous knowledge documentations. Our leader works tirelessly in front lines of the climate actions each and every day. Food system has always been in a hate-love relationship with the climate. They nourish us, but yet they emit. They sustain communities, but climate change put them at risk. They are essentials, but increasingly fragile. But within this complex landscape, one part of the global food system offers clarity and hope. Blue food. Blue food is nutrient-rich, lower emission, climate resilient, and rooted in community culture, and at the same time supported by the ecosystem like mangroves, seagrass that store massive amount of carbon. For Indonesia, the largest world archipelagic country, and also for the Amazon basin, where the rivers are the lifelines, and for Japan with its deep ocean heritage, Blue food is both a climate solution and a cultural identity. That is why we gather here today to connect these regions through a South and East Asia dialogue. Today, I would like to invite our esteemed panelists to explore this topic and are joined by four remarkable speakers, each offering a different but complementary lens. First of all, I would like to invite Professor of Speech Communication from Oregon State University, Professor Gregg B. Walker. Please come forward. Over here, Professor, if you don't mind. And second, we have the next one. And next one, we have Mbak Dia Lestari, Head of Community Development from Desa Bumi, which will talk about the communities through renewable energy and sustainable development. Over there, Mbak Dia, thank you. Third one, we have Maiton Silva dos Santos, co-founder Cuira Network, Rare Brazil, which talk about the perspective from Brazil. Maiton, please come forward, over here. You may also come here as a translator. Yeah, you're over here. And then last but not the least, we have also Yuiko Mitani, Program Manager from the Climate Reality Japan. And Yuiko will bring perspective on East Asia, where tradition meets innovation. Yuiko, please come forward. Okay, without any further ado, I would like to invite Professor Gregg to begin with your presentation, and then afterward, we will ask several questions to Professor Gregg. Professor Gregg, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I do apologize for the raspy voice, but what I want to do is talk about not blue food per se, because there are others in this room who are experts on blue food, but where I live in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, we understand the importance of blue food. As I was telling one of my colleagues, we would probably be eating salmon as often as we could, not to mention other important fish that exist in the part of the world I live. What I want to do, though, is highlight a few slides and talk to you about a method for communities to organize. So we can go ahead through the slides. Do I have how should we advance the slides? Okay. If we could, okay, I want to share this with you from the concept note that was part of this session. Look at these statements in red. Explore multi-stakeholder pathways. How do we do that? I'll talk about that in a bit. And how do we engage in a just transition to a blue economy? And I'll talk about that in a bit. Let's go to the next slide. These are statements of just transition that I think you know well. What I want to highlight is that just transition is in part about governance and community empowerment. Let's go to the next slide if you can. So, in my research for this presentation, I looked at community-based fisheries organizations in Indonesia. You can see there's Fokmaswas, there's Turf, there's Sasilaut, and then there are general fishing and farming groups. Let's go to the next slide. But what's interesting is, in an article that was in Marine Policy a couple of years ago, the authors wrote that Indonesian fisheries law and policy is currently dominated by hierarchical or centralized governance models, which have several shortcomings compared to participatory governance. So what I'd like to do, if we can go to the next slide, is talk about a method that colleagues and I have developed over the last few years in the United States, and we have applied them to community-based natural resource management groups. I work primarily in forestry, so others on this panel are much more knowledgeable about oceans and saltwater systems than I am. But what I do is spend time with communities. And my colleagues and I have developed something called collaborative alignment. How can communities get organized around fisheries or whatever environmental or natural resource issue might be important? And as you can see, I've used this to help communities form organizations and also to evaluate the work that they're doing. Let's go to the next slide, and let's skip that one. And I want to get right to if we can keep going to the next slide, and go one more. The collaborative alignment, I want you to think for a moment Have any of you ever driven a car or a truck where you hit a hole in the road, a pothole? When you hit that pothole, the wheels of that truck or car go out of alignment, and the car goes this way and that way. We've taken that metaphor, and we've said that for a community to organize, we need to address 4 P's: people, purpose, people, process, and product. The next slide, please. The 4 P's are this. What is the purpose? So let's imagine we focus on an Indonesian community where the fishery is a big part of the local economy. And this group wants to get together around climate change, wants to get together around the blue food, wants to get together around community empowerment. How do they do that? Well, they start with purpose. Why are we together? What's our mission? What are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? We want a healthy, sustainable, fishing-based economy. We want a healthy, sustainable fishery. But then the second P, who needs to be involved? I worked with a group in the U.S. on forestry issues. And the people who brought me in to help said, we don't want environmentalists in our group. And I said, why would you not want them? They have a stake in this. And they said, we don't think young people need to be involved. And I said, they have a stake in it. So the people are everyone who you think needs to be involved in this local group that's going to work on, we'll say, a sustainable fishery and a blue food economy. And then the third is the process. How are we going to work together? And the fourth is the product. What are we going to produce? So we can go to the next slide. I'm happy to share these slides with anyone who would like them, but I want to make sure we have ample time for all the presenters and for your comments and questions. So if we go through purpose, next slide, and keep going again through people, and we'll go one more. You can kind of see the text here. We'll keep going to process. And we want to go one more on process. I want to stop here, though, for a moment. What are the procedures in any community-based group around authority, accountability, governance, leadership, decision-making? These are really critical issues. And if we're going to involve young people, we want to make sure that the people component includes the local schools and the universities. And we want to make sure that younger generations are involved in the decision making. Let's continue to the next one, if you will. And the product you can see is, what is it that we're producing? What are the deliverables? If we can go to the next slide, please. And one more, go to the next slide, one more. So the metaphor is alignment. The simple answer here is you've got to align the people, you've got to align the purpose, you've got to align the product, and you've got to align the process. Now, I'm going to close with a bit of a story. 2 different collaborative groups I worked with. One in Western Oregon in the U.S. It's called it's a watershed group. It's the Southwest Coastal Watershed Group, and they were not in alignment. They did not have the right people involved. They turned some people away. They weren't clear about the process. And they weren't even sure what they were producing. And they failed. They struggled. A different organization I worked with in the state of Wyoming, the exact opposite occurred. They organized around a good purpose. They brought in a diverse group of people. They involved young people, as well as elders like me. They also had a good process and had a good product. And as a result of that, they received hundreds of thousands of dollars from the, believe it or not, the Trump administration to work on fire health, forest health, and wildfire prevention. So what I really wanted to focus on was the stakeholder aspect of this session and share with you a new approach called collaborative alignment. And if we can go all the way to the last slide, I'll scroll through the rest of them. You can see the aspect here, and we'll keep going all the way to the end. Oh, we'll keep going beyond that. And one more. So going forward, this is what I'd like to leave you with. It's been used in a lot of places. I want you to think about the community-based groups that you know are a part of, in particular ones that are working on blue food. And to what extent would this be a framework that could be useful? And if we go to the next slide, there's an article that my friends and I published a couple of years ago. It's absolutely free in a publication house called Frontiers that explains collaborative alignment in some detail. So thank you very much for your time and putting up with our very raspy voice.
Thank you, Professor Gregg, for your amazing presentations. But if I may, I want to ask you one question, Professor Gregg. On one of your slides, you showed that countries like Indonesia, Brazil, and Japan should actually probably shift the role of the narratives, because on one of your slides you highlight the role of the narratives.
Yeah.
How should the countries like Japan and Indonesia frame blue food so it shifts from the margin of the mainstream into the climate negotiations?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think if we think of it in the context of blue food, and I should tell you, I've been to this last 16 COPs, so I've been involved in this process since 2009. And one of the things that I think is important is that the activities that occur at the local level around blue food, around blue carbon, have to be communicated to these negotiators. Because this is a bias I have. It's not just about mitigation, even though it's important. But if we look at Indonesia, compared with the United States where I live, my country produces a lot more greenhouse gas emissions than Indonesia. So for Indonesians, it's how to become more resilient. How do we promote sustainability? So the negotiators here, to me, need to address the human dimensions as much as the technical dimensions. And the very event like this and the focus on blue food, I think highlights the importance of communities coming together and coming up with strategies for resilience and sustainability.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Gregg. Please give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard from Professor Gregg the perspective of the global architecture. Now let's travel back to Indonesia, and I would like to turn our attention to Mbak Dia. Now I would like to hear from Mbak Dia the lessons that we got from the communities on the shoreline to see what is blue food for them and how does it relate to the earlier points that communities actually has to be empowered, as mentioned by Professor Gregg. Over to you, Mbak Dia. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mas Ari, and also thank you to Climate Reality for inviting us. Coming from Indonesia, a nation of more than 17,000 islands, I've learned that the community who live closest to water, who live closest to nature, are often the one who live furthest from reliable energy. And that distance shapes how they farm, how they store food, how they earn a living, and how they adapt to climate change. And I'm Dia from Desa Bumi, and I'm going to share our experiences in Indonesia of how renewable energy connects to blue food systems. Next, please. Next. Desa Bumi is a youth initiative led by Gama Tohir in 2015, and he sends his warm regards and regret that he cannot join us here today. Desa Bumi began with a strong and powerful vision that renewable energy should empower communities. And we've worked with rural communities across Indonesia to strengthen access to electricity, food production, education, and also local livelihoods. Next, please. So in Desa Bumi, we see renewable energy as the backbone of food security. So we see that energy can enable production and food processing. We will tell a story about our projects in Indonesia, how solar power can support fish processing in Indonesia, and how reliable power strengthen blue food system. So our model basically combines technology and community empowerment and community ownership. Next, please. So as shown here, these are our 4 projects across Indonesia. The first one is in Ciptagelar in West Java, a 40 kilowatt micro hydro power plant powers school and homes in Kasepuhan, Ciptagelar. It's local communities in Halimun Mountain in West Java. And it shows how local power can honor tradition in West Java. And in South Kalimantan, we have 2 projects, one in Liu and one in Bangkiling Raya, where solar power can support fish ponds and also fish processing into frozen products and fish cakes and so on. And in 2024, we started a project in Sukobubuk, Pati in Central Java. And I actually just returned from the site before flying here to Beleng. And it was interesting how solar water pump system can irrigate up to 25 hectares of farmland and other productive areas. Next, please. We are still in Sukobubuk. The same system also runs a cold storage unit that helps farmers preserve fruits longer and reduce waste. Its system is managed by Village Enterprise, making it both economically and technically sustainable. So the benefits stay with the community, supporting income generation and food security. Next, please. So every solar panel we install tells a story of change, a story about learning, and a story about trust. Our model brings together technical and community empowerment. So we train local youth to become system operators and community technicians. So, and slowly these projects became more than infrastructure. They became spaces for learning, confidence, capability, and community. Next. So the energy is the invisible thread that connects food system and economy. I think this is where the green and blue economies come together, because sustainable foods begins not only in the ocean but also in the village, where land, water, and power are in one connected system. So through collaboration, partnership with youth organizations, private sectors, universities, and local government, I think Desa Bumi is helping build that bridge, and the energy and ownership will create stronger and independent communities. I think that's all for now, Mas Ari. We can continue with further discussion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Give a round of applause to Madia. Madia presentation brings our attention directly towards the communities, the work of the communities, the work of the different stakeholders and the communities, and then the work of the villages areas where livelihood, culture, and also climate intersects every day. Madia, I was wondering, after your experience um, as a person who directly works with the community, in one of your slides, we see that how the youth and women leading so many different projects on the stewarding the community livelihood. Could you share some of the story that made you think that this community innovation deserves to influence national or global policy, Madia? Over to you.
Maybe I can where we face a question for okay. We face a question from people: can sunlight really power our homes? And others worried also that if the system broke, uh, they are worried that there would be no one who could fix it. So from our collaboration, and the trust we gain, I think they are now willing to grow, and they can create an impact for not for us but for themselves, I think.
Okay, thank you, Madia. One more question, Madia, for you, actually. Not yet, yet yan. So, for your community, Madia, for the community that has been touched by Desabumi, what does Bluefoot means for them, probably in your work, if any?
Thank you. I think Bluefoot for them is a simple way. It's something they are live with, and they can see the fish bond behind their homes, and they can process their own food, and also they can create a bigger value from the food itself. So I think they can see the benefits of the blue food, and I think before they just see the fish, just the usual one, but then now they can see that blue food is their power resources, and it's a solution for climate solutions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Magidia. Please give your round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Probably I would like to also return back a bit to Professor Gregg, if I may. Professor Gregg, since we have heard from Dia regarding the work of the community and also what does it mean for the community to have or to be empowered, how does the real world examples from Dia is actually aligned with the system narrative that you explained earlier, Professor?
Share that one more time. I heard part of it.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
After listening to Dia's presentation and also experience, how does it relate with the system narrative that you described earlier?
No, that's an excellent question. The four case studies that you shared, always the interesting thing is who are the decision makers, and how are local communities involved? Because the initiative could come from business, it could come from a ministry, and that's perfectly fine. But to what extent does it go beyond the corporate interest or the government interest and build the capacity in the local community so the community shares ownership of those projects you shared? And the approach that I've talked about, collaborative alignment, would benefit the business and the government, because they would say, we have a a framework now to involve the young people, the older people, communities to claim ownership and be partners, if you will. So I think, and I want to say too, wonderful cases and very exciting to see people thinking ahead so far. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Greg. All right, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard from the global perspective, from the Indonesia perspective. Now we would like to see, and let's move to the Brazil, where the food, identity, and also carbon stewardships are inspirable. I would like to move our attention to Maiton. Maiton, your work shows how coastal communities connect foods, culture, and also carbon. Based on your experience, what does Blue Food means for the people in Brazil, and how does that words or word often overlooked by many people in Brazil? Over to you.
Senhoras e senhores, boa tarde a todos. Feliz demais por estar aqui representando a Rede de Juventude. Meu nome é Mailton, sou cofundador dessa rede de juventude chamada Cuíras, que fala justamente da inquietude da juventude, dessa força de vitalidade, de tudo que representa hoje a juventude nesse cenário nacional, internacional e global.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is Mailton. He is the co-founder of Queer Network, a network for the youth, representing them in a global scale.
Esse tema ele é muito importante para nós porque conecta a segurança alimentar e conecta também as comunidades. Para nós, do Brasil, que vem dessa realidade da ancestralidade, que vem falar sobre essa conexão de comunidade, é imprescindível.
To us, it is a very important thing because it connects food security and ancestrality.
E a gente, quanto juventude, quanto rede, que faz parte desse cenário nacional e internacional, a gente tem muito que falar sobre da nossa própria experiência. E o que eu venho falar aqui é muito mais da nossa experiência quanto juventude de estar nesse cenário.
Us, as youth, we have a lot to talk about regarding our experience.
Se eu for falar um dos desafios que a gente tem, é muito da preservação da natureza. Uma vez que a gente faz de muito para preservar, mas a gente não pode fazer o tudo. E o muito que a gente pode fazer é conectar mais jovens que queiram somar com a gente, que queiram de fato estar com a gente. No cenário de várias perspectivas de vida de fato, de quem estuda, de quem está no território, de quem quer fazer acontecer, e aqueles que às vezes não querem também esse cenário, a gente faz o que queira. No cenário de falar, olha, você é importante para o território, e isso parte para uma tomada de consciência, de fato, querer estar no território.
One of the challenges we face is regarding the preservation of nature, because we cannot do everything, but we do a lot. And what we do is connect the youth from the territories, showing them how they can act and bringing them to the network.
Agora, algo interessante que tem em relação à alimentação é pensar que o mangue, além de cuidar, de preservar e de estarmos na maior faixa contínua de manguezais do mundo, é lá que está a nossa alimentação, é lá que está a nossa subsistência. E se eu fosse fazer uma pergunta, quem é que se alimenta? Sou eu, somos nós, é vocês, é as comunidades que de lá de fato precisam da matéria, precisam do alimento, precisam do que ele tem, que é o peixe, que é o caranguejo. Eu poderia falar uma série de espécies que lá vivem por ser berçário. E por nós estarmos lá, isso é importante, a segurança alimentar para nós. A gente precisa melhorar muito em vários fatores nesse quesito alimentação. A gente falta muito apoio de vários parceiros, mas a gente pode negar que não temos apoio. A gente tem apoio, agora a gente tem que amadurecer o tipo de relação tanto no setor privado, quanto no terceiro setor público, governo. Esse é um desafio que a gente, juventude, e nem só a juventude, mas para além da juventude, é o setor também daqueles que administram as redes. Eu vou falar, não falei no começo da apresentação, mas eu também sou um jovem, presidente de associação que está nesse cenário, lutando para além da juventude, as comunidades que de fato dependem do território.
Now moving on to food systems, it's from the mangroves that we take our sustenance. It's from the mangroves that we take our food. Either fishes or crabs or a lot of other species that live on the mangroves and in which they come from, they are born, so they grow up in the mangroves, and it's very important to talk about it. As youth, what we do is to try to get a knowledge to the territory and to have other support systems, either from the private sector or the public sector. Also, Mailton is also a president from an association of the Marine Extractivist Reserve of Santarém Novo. And to him, this is also a very important fight.
Agora, muito importante que o professor comentou na sua fala anterior, é que a gente, enquanto rede de juventude, tem atuado em vários cenários. E um cenário que a gente gosta muito também de atuar é no cenário político, porque a gente entende que é importante estarmos lá. Aqui no Brasil, a gente tem acompanhado muito a Lei do Mar, que foi publicada agora recente, e também acompanhado o PEN, que é o Plano Espacial Marinho, que vai tratar sobre essa área marítima, porque a gente entende que o mar não é terra sem lei. E a lei tem que ser tanto do lado do pescador, quanto do lado de quem é a comunidade que depende desse espaço.
As the professor said, the youth, my youth and youth, they are also connected with politics. And regarding politics, they are very aware and very connected to the management of the coastal systems and of the oceans, because they understand that they need to be on these spaces.
E para concluir a minha fala, eu parto muito da tomada de consciência de que, de fato, a gente está no território e que a gente tem que, de fato, ter essa consciência que nós somos o território também. Não é só o mangue. A gente tem uma campanha chamada Mangue com Gente, que fala justamente desse cuidado e de relação que a gente, quanto pessoa, tem com a natureza. Isso é importante para nós. A gente cuida da natureza e é uma regra natural da vida. Ela devolve também o carinho que a gente tem por ela. Muito obrigado.
To conclude, it's important to understand that people are also the mangroves. It's not just the mangroves, it's not just the nature, but the people also. They have a campaign called Nosso Mangue Tem Valor com Gente. Our mangroves are valued with people. So it's also very important to bring people to also protect the nature. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melton. I would like to ask a follow-up question actually, since he mentioned a lot about the role of youth and also multi-stakeholder roles in protecting the nature. Because in Indonesia, we also have major amount of mangroves. And it acts as a climate shield, especially in the coastal areas of Indonesia. We are trying to prevent the flood or sea level rise, and also at the same time, as you mentioned before, create the livelihood for people who are living in the coastal area, because mangroves are amazing ecosystem for supporting the crabs, fishes, and many others. And in Brazil, what kind of ecosystem aside from the mangroves that plays the same protective yet also identity shaping roles? Over to you, Milton.
Aqui as nossas experiências é muito de território. E para além do território que vocês têm, enquanto manguezal da Indonésia, a gente tem o nosso mangue, que por sinal é muito preservado, tem um desafio de preservação, mas a gente tem como bem preservado. Para além disso, a gente tem também várias comunidades para além do manguezal. A gente tem povos comunidades tradicionais, a gente é um povo extrativista, mas também tem os indígenas, e essa conjuntura de povos ela fortalece as redes. quando a gente chega, por exemplo, em Brasília, que é o estado de administração, a gente vê vários povos conectados lutando por pautas distintas, mas com objetivos bem parecidos.
Our experience is very related to the territory. Just like in Indonesia, mangroves here in the Amazon are also very important. The Amazon mangroves are made by the most protected mangrove coastal line in the whole world. But not only the mangroves, it's also very important to talk about indigenous peoples and extractivist peoples. One example is that in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, when we have events there, we can connect all these groups of people, and it shows that this fight, the nature fight, is very important.
Okay, thank you so much. Please give a round of applause to Milton and also Isabella, the translator. Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we've seen that the efforts is tirelessly fought by so many people, by so many communities. And now we would like to move our attentions across the Pacific to a country where the ocean culture is deeply rooted in history, cuisine, and also identity. I would like to give the floor to Yuiko, our branch climate clarity from the Japan. Over to Yuiko.
Thank you. Hi, nice to be here. My name is Yuiko Mitani, and I am attending this COP as the branch manager of the Climate Reality Project Japan. But I also run a very small non-profit organization called Mobile Sea Otters in Japan that works to restore seaweed forests. So that's much more relevant. So I put two logos here. I will just, in this presentation, I will introduce more context of Japan, as well as some of the efforts to restore seaweed beds that are crucial to the biodiversity and our food systems under the sea. Next, please. So I think it is a very hidden ecosystem unless you are a diver. So seaweed and microalgae was not, for a very long time, not really recognized by the IPCC. But in the October meeting, it still is not officially recognized, but the IPCC did mention that we should start considering this as a key source of blue carbon. Next, please. And Japan actually already did reflect blue carbon in its greenhouse gas inventory. So in early last year, Japan did account for the CO2 absorbed by the seaweed beds and microalgae. So that's called blue carbon. Already in our GHG inventory, and submitted that to UNFCCC as I think it's the first country to do this. So we can say that Japan officially counts our blue carbon and submitted to this UNFCCC structure. Next, please. And I'll just skip through this, but we are island nation. We're very famous for our seafood cuisines, and we are like big seafood eaters. So we do have the 6th longest coastline in the world. We do consume a lot of fish and shellfish. We do have, I looked up on the population of the fishers, which to my surprise also only represents 0.1% of the population. And it is fast declining because it's an aging group, and it's very difficult to earn money in that occupation. So these are the frontline communities, also people who are protecting the biodiversity, but it's declining really fast. Next, please. This is just a very quick historical context, but so I think we have had this evidence of fishery existing in Japan from 14,000 BCE to 5,000 BCE, and we consume 50 kinds of seaweed out of 1,500 kinds of seaweed grown around our country. And we do have, just like Indonesia, we do have a ministerial agency dedicated specifically to fishery. Next, please. And I just like to introduce the concept of Satoyama and Satoumi, because these are kind of the traditional concepts that we have in Japan. And Yama is mountains and Umi is ocean. So this is the concept. Satoyama on the left-hand side is the term that describes the kind of the ecosystem around the mountains and flatlands. So how people can live in harmony, coexist with the nature by taking good care of the nature. So we still do take resources. We take our food, we take our resources from the natural ecosystem around us without damaging or without over-exploiting the natural system around us. And Satomi is the same concept, just in the corresponding coastal and marine areas. So by us, we can coexist with our natural environment if we don't do too much, if we don't do anything too damaging. Next, please. And because of the long history of our dependence on fishery, but sadly, as you all know, that the seaweed beds are fast declining everywhere in the world because of the climate change, because of many other environmental issues. But in Japan, there have actually been a lot of restoration efforts for decades. And a lot of them are led by fishery co-ops and the ministry, the agency of fishery. So this slide is just to show that there are like hundreds and hundreds of initiatives, mostly led by fishery initiatives across Japan, trying to restore the seaweed beds. Next, please. And I'd just like to show a few examples. These are not, I don't represent these organizations, but just to show that there are many, many examples. I'm just showing you 3 examples today. Next, please. The first one is in Nagasaki Prefecture, and this is led by a university, so academia and the municipality, working with students who are scuba divers. And they dive together, and in the case of Japanese sea, it is the increasing number of sea urchins and fish that eat seaweed that used to live in more southern parts of the ocean. But because of the sea temperature rising, these ones are coming to live in Japan, eating for much longer seasons than they used to. So these divers work together to conduct some research. They also work together to cull the sea urchins, which we eat a lot of them, by the way. So that is like a very good example of the collaboration between academia, municipality, and even student divers. So I think it's an interesting example. Next, please. And what do we do with the sea urchins that we cull? Do we just kill them? And this second one is an interesting example of, so I put edible approaches to seaweed bed restoration. Next, please. So this is another example in Kanagawa Prefecture, which is very different. It's just south of Tokyo. And they do very similar activities. So they work with fishers and divers to catch sea urchins that are increasing in numbers and are eating up all of our seaweed beds. But what they did was to actually put them in the land-based farming system to give, I think they actually feed them some of the scrap vegetables that were going to be wasted. So it is a very good example of circular ecosystem, and by feeding them these scrap vegetables, these sea urchins will become fatter and more tastier in our definition. And we love to eat sea urchins in our sushis, and we eat them raw. So yeah, this is a good example of kind of keeping the cycle closed. And next is actually my organization, Mobile Sea Otters. So this is a non-profit organization, and we work with many different people, many different stakeholders. So we have our executive director is a scientist who used to work for the University of Tokyo, but then we work with a lot of volunteer divers. We work with municipalities, fishers, and some professional divers too. And we start by giving educational workshops to volunteer divers, and then we work with them together. Sometimes we catch those sea urchins. The picture in the middle is actually us creating something that is called spore bags. So when the seaweed releases spores, basically it's like eggs for seaweed. By putting them underwater, they can release these spores to then grow the new seaweed. So these are some of the activities that we did. Next, please. Yeah, so I'd like to, I think there are so many efforts going on in Japan for a very long time, and some of them have become quite successful. But there are many challenges and critique as well in the whole ecosystem of blue carbon, because I think what's happening underwater is not visible. It's very hard to track. It's also very expensive, very dangerous sometimes if you have to like scuba dive and to do these activities. So there's a difficulty in the stability of sequestering blue carbon. And I think there's also a lot of risk for greenwashing, as fossil fuel companies and many corporations are interested in purchasing these blue carbon credits. So we, as a civil society, we have to be very careful, because our restoration efforts can be kind of exchanged for money that the polluting companies can use to offset. So this is happening right now in Japan. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Give a round of applause to Yuiko. Yuiko, by the way, I really love the logo of your organizations.
Thank you.
The otter as a diver, because I myself is also a scuba diver. It's like very cute, and it's also interesting to see the seaweed ecosystem, because for so many people, probably it's overseen, the seaweed ecosystem. I dove on this area, but not in Japan, but in South Africa. It has a lot of potential actually, and on how it's actually not only provide the food, but also at the same time provide carbon sink. It is also interesting in those areas. But I would like to also highlight some of the points, Yuiko, on your presentations. You mentioned before that Japan is trying to combine the traditions, for instance, Satoyama and also Satoyumi, sorry, with cutting-edge innovations from sustainable agriculture and also blue carbon science. In your opinion, how is Japan reframing blue carbon as both modern climate strategy but also preserving cultural heritage? Over to you.
I think, yeah, thank you for this question. I think this is very important. Like, something that I'm very mindful of is that we do not want to talk about seaweed bed restoration just as sequestering blue carbon, because then that is easily utilized as the greenwashing, as I mentioned. So we always talk about this as more of like multiple benefit projects. So not just blue carbon, but it's biodiversity restoration, meaning blue food as well, food supplies, but also livelihood of the fishers, because these fishery communities are, getting old and like declining in numbers. So we say this is also to do with working with local communities, working with local cities and towns, villages to, not just increasing the number of seaweed, but it is like larger, economic, societal impacts altogether.
Yes, I do completely believe with your opinion that we should not see this blue system as just simply carbon sequestrations. because it easily can be turned into greenwashing. Actually, for me, also the blue system and the whole system in the ocean is like in the junctions of not only providing ecosystem sustainability, but also providing nourishment to the community, providing food, providing livelihood. So that's one of the aspects that probably has to be highlighted. Multi-functionality of the ocean ecosystem as our solution for the climate. And since you also underline the importance of the community leadership, Yuiko, in your opinion, what is the role of the multi-stakeholder playing in shaping Japan's blue system future?
Thank you for the question. This is like, I think there is a lot of challenges in entering our sea. I think one of them is the bureaucratic nature of even entering the ocean in Japan. We have a very strong regulation, very strong protection by the fishery co-ops. They do great jobs, but they also don't allow outsiders to enter our ocean. So I think I would hope that, but for the right reasons, right? Because they're
Yes,
worried
yes, of
about
course.
poaching and, you know, people stealing their expensive abalone fish and all, abalone shellfish and all that. So, but I think I would really love to have a more open, you know, like if you are just a leisure diver, sometimes you go to Indonesia and you do scuba dive, but it would be amazing to mobilize these Japanese leisure divers
Yes.
in the local
Into
village.
the local work
Yeah.
as well.
But sometimes it's very difficult for our how rigid and conservative our social structure is. So yeah, but I think that could be really fun and effective.
Yeah, hopefully we can work together on that. Please give a round of applause to Yuiko. Now I would like to turn our attention to Madia again, since Yuiko also mentioned about so many different challenges that she faced in Japan. Do you think you also face the same challenges in Indonesia, Madia, whenever you're working with the community? Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Working with communities, it's a bit tough at the beginning. I've discussed before with Prof. Gregg that we need time to gain trust from the communities, since they had seen many projects just come and go. So I think they had every reason to worry. So we collaborate with them so we can we can gain their trust, and we can work out, we can do our projects together. And the most important is we need to tell them what the purpose of the project is, since sometimes they don't get what is our purpose. So I think we need time to make a vision and mission with them.
Okay, thank you, Madia. Please give her a round of applause. Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard a lot from all the panelists, but I still have questions actually to all the panelists here. So as we know that currently the blue system, blue food, blue carbon, and so many other blues, also entering the negotiations along with the so many different issues from the climate financing and also high integrity carbon markets. In your opinion, each one of you panelists, what excites you the most and what concerns you the most regarding the entry of this blue system into the negotiations? Probably starting from Nathan.
Em relação às negociações, a nossa maior preocupação hoje, quanto manguezal, é quando se trata de carbono azul. Uma vez que as nossas comunidades são extremamente assediadas e a gente está na linha de frente para proteção. Mas não é só para além do carbono, é a questão das comunidades serem escutadas e de fato é uma participação ativa. Assim como também quando se fala do PEM, que as comunidades, que é o Planejamento Espacial Marinho, a comunidade também seja escutada, para que a gente coloque também as nossas dificuldades, nossas necessidades, assim como tantos outros, enfim, coisas que acontecem, como bem a perfuração de petróleo na foz da margem equatorial e tantos outros.
As mangroves, our biggest concern is regarding the blue carbon because the communities feel a lot of harassment regarding the blue carbon markets, and they need to be heard. Their demands need to be heard regarding the territory. They need to be considered. And also another concern is the petroleum exploration here in the Amazon coast.
Agora, a maior inspiração que a gente tem nesse cenário, eu quanto jovem também, com 29 anos, é fazer com que outras jovens também tenham essa participação ativa na tomada de decisão e não ficar só no problema, e para além do problema, achar a solução. E a nossa rede de juventude faz muito isso, que é inspirar. Inspirar pessoas, inspirar sonhos, inspirar jovens, para que a gente saia da bolha e quando furar a bolha, lá esteja nós, estudando, fazendo mestrado, construindo, planejando e participando. Essa é a ação. O pensamento da positividade.
Our biggest inspiration regarding youth as a young person is to include these young people in the decision-making process, to make it not only in paper, but to make these decisions a reality. And also to include those young people in education, through a higher education, and to go outside our bubble. Thank you.
Thank you. Very powerful. Next, I would like to ask Professor Gregg for his opinion. Over to you, Professor.
When, excuse me, when I started coming to the COPs in 2009, there was not significant discussion of oceans. There was not a significant discussion of blue carbon. It's only recently that we even talk about blue food. So where is this in the NDCs of countries? How do you factor in ocean policy related to food as well as energy or carbon capture? How do you quantify the benefits of blue food and blue carbon? Certainly it can be done. And I think it's important, again, to involve the community and their local knowledge in identifying the benefits of both blue food and blue carbon. And I'll add one other thing. I have just retired after teaching for 51 years. Woo! Thank you. And I'm only 45. But I started out as a high school teacher before I became a college professor. I was an advisor to the science club. My students were hungry for opportunities to contribute to science education. And then as a university professor, my students have been hungry for opportunities to participate in climate action. So as we think about blue food, blue carbon, and simply how we tackle the climate crisis, we need to, again, as the youngos would tell us, we need to make sure that we provide meaningful opportunities for the younger generation to contribute their talent and energy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. Maria, next is yours.
Talking about blue carbon, I think Indonesia have enormous resources, and since Indonesia with their more than 17,000 islands, these resources can be managed optimally. And but our homework, I think, our skill and how to enter this theme into school and education is important, because many agenda needs to be addressed, to be discussed and included in the regulation. I think that's all, Mas Ari.
Thank you. Next, Yuiko.
Yes, so blue carbon, blue food, blue this system in the negotiations. Yes, I think there are a few points. I think the first one is very, very simple, that all our oceans are connected. So no matter how much we do, if like everyone else doesn't. I'm not saying no one does, but we all have to work together on this. So I think that's one point. But another point is that I think there, as you said, there's really not been enough talks, enough attention to the ocean ecosystems. And this is the platform that needs to kind of bring this into the attention. And as I said in my presentation, if you are, you know, just like me, if you eat a lot of seafood or if you are a scuba diver, you don't know what's going on under the ocean. So there is still a lot to discover. Human beings do not know enough about our ocean, whilst we send people to the universe. So I think this needs to be done. And I strongly advocate for COP31 to be hosted in Australia and the Pacific for this reason. If this is the COP of the forest, then we also need the COP of the ocean. So we need to really pay a lot more attention and a lot more scientific research and a lot of guidelines to be made and provided and understood by everybody.
Okay, thank you so much. Please give all the panels a round of applause. Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard a lot about the underlining, all the silver lining from all of the panelists that we need to do more about our oceans. We need to study more about our ocean, but at the same time, it is really a fragile ecosystem, and we have to be really careful in the way we are preserving it and utilizing it. And I would like now to turn our attentions to all the floor. I would like to open the floor for any question from the audience or any reflections from your point of view. Please, anyone? Okay. Since no questions, I would like to ask probably to the audience, is anyone here work with the mangrove or seagrass? No one yet, except for Yuiko probably. Or anyone from the Pacific Island here? Or anyone who is following Article 6 negotiations? No one too? Okay, but it's interesting to see that despite we have had 30 COPs, but our knowledge and issues on the oceans is also limited, as you mentioned before, Yuiko. And to also underline that, what Yuiko have said before, we have sent people to the moon, to the space, but yet our ocean is probably only 10% has been discovered, and there's a lot of more that we can learn from this system. The system that's probably closest to us, yet it is the furthest from us in terms of the knowledge and science. Friends, today we travel all across the system, from the global frameworks to the Indonesian villages, to the Amazonian rivers and coastal, and to the Japan's coast. And we learn that today the food system may be full of contradictions, but Bluefoot breaks the contradictions. It is resilient. It is cultural. It is sustainable. And also it is a climate solutions, grounded in community wisdom, indigenous knowledge, and youth leaderships. On behalf of the Climate Reality Project Indonesia, I thank all of the panelists, Professor Gregg, Madia, Milton, Yuiko, and also the translator. And I would like everyone to please also prepare to scan the QR code on the screen. Could you please kindly show the QR code on the screen? Oh, seriously, okay. Probably after the QR code, could you, Kadino, please kindly show the QR code? This is our ebook from the Climate Reality Project Indonesia regarding Bluefoot initiatives. And please scan the code. Scan the code for the free ebook. And I would like to turn the floor to the audience for the question.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm delighted to be privileged to have listened to some of the speakers. I came in a bit late, but I met the last two speakers speaking, and I was excited concerning the issues about the ocean, because this is an area that has been really, really neglected in previous COP. And indeed, the Paris Agreement, although it's been expanding, but then has not really dealt extensively issues about ocean. Even the SDGs, when it says life below water, many of us do not realize. Yesterday I was reading something that said the oxygen from the oceans is about 50 to 80% of our needs. So the oxygen content is about 50 to 80%, and that is far more than what we can get from trees. Yet we talk about planting trees, we talk about having greenery, and we do not realize that we do not have as much oxygen from them compared to what we have in the ocean. But I also think that this time has come. This is the time for us to create the awareness. Many act out of ignorance. And fortunately, you said that the oceans are interconnected, which is the truth, because I teach environmental law in the university. I know that the interconnectedness is also a challenge, because as they flow into one another, there are so many things that are carried along and that affects individual marine ecosystem, which we need as human beings to also be conscious of. Apart from the individual, like you said, maybe Japan going to the other area, Indonesia, the seawater. But then when they are going with that risk. They are going with the things they are carrying that will interact with the other ecosystem. Many of them will cause problems. So in doing this, we have to be conscious of these challenges to see how we can mitigate them at the onset and not allow it there, because one thing with the sea is that before you realize the problem, many of the aquamarine will have been lost, or some of them will have been washed, and you now begin to do damage control. So I just want to encourage each and every one of us that this is the time for action. This is the time to hype it and create the awareness, the needed awareness, so that people will begin to build on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your reflections. Please give a round of applause. Would anyone from the panel would like to respond to that regarding how we are actually have to increase our awareness regarding the blue system and its very fragile system, and it's currently we need more and more action. I say this what we have right now is not enough. Anyone would like to respond to that? Yeah, mau respond? Cukup. My turn is still being translated. Hold on. You want to respond, my turn?
A tradução sempre um desafio. Mas a gente vê como tudo está conectado, como eu falei no começo, através da nossa experiência de vida. Floresta, carbono, pessoas. E falando que a gente é de uma área de território de manguezal, que a maré entra, que é formada também pela maré que vem dos oceanos, isso é uma conexão de vida, sabe? Um conjunto de ecossistemas.
We see how everything is connected through our life experiences, through the forest, through the people, through carbon. And in the mangroves, we can see how everything is connected because we have where the river meets the sea. And in that, we can see life. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please give all the panelists a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, panelists. Amazing panelists, amazing delegates. Thank you for coming here. And on behalf of the Climate Reality Project Indonesia, we would like to thank your participation in these discussions. Enjoy the rest of the COP30, and let's continue working together for a healthy ocean and just sustainable food futures. I'm Arif Janokari Padamo, thanking all the panelists and all the delegates coming here. I'm returning the session back to the MC. Thank you.